I used to believe that the worst kind of betrayal came from strangers. You know, coworkers who talk behind your back or exes who ghost you. But I was wrong. The real knife in the heart betrayal? That comes from family, the people who know your soft spots, your dreams, your vulnerabilities, and use them against you. My name is Jenna Matthews, and this is the story of how my sister, Tessa, destroyed something sacred to me. Not just a dress, my wedding dress. And how, from the ashes of that heartbreak, I rose up and made her cry tears she never expected to shed. Tessa is my older sister by 3 years. If you'd met us at a family barbecue, you'd think we were close. We looked alike, same honey brown hair, same freckled nose, same big smile we inherited from our mom. But behind that camera-perfect image was a lifetime of quiet rivalry. Except it wasn't always quiet. And it was never equal. Tessa was the shiny one. The homecoming queen. The one who turned heads in every room. She didn't just walk, she floated. People adored her, especially our parents. I, on the other hand, was the quiet one. The smart sister. The one who stayed up late studying while Tessa snuck out to parties. The one who got praised for straight A's while she got standing ovations for her beauty pageant trophies. But no matter how different we were, I still loved her. I wanted us to be close. I defended her when she skipped Thanksgiving dinner to fly to Cabo with a boyfriend. I covered for her when she lied to our mom about a job she never had. I forgave her more times than I should have. So when I got engaged to Luke, my college sweetheart, I really hoped it would be different. I wanted her to be happy for me. And for a moment it seemed like she was. She hugged me when I told her. She offered to help with planning. She even cried when I invited her to be my maid of honor. I always knew you'd be the first to settle down, she said. You're the one with your life together. Maybe that was the first red flag. Her words sounded sweet, but her smile never reached her eyes. Still, I brushed it off.
I wanted to believe she'd changed.
The day I found my wedding dress was one of the happiest days of my life. It was a quiet Sunday morning. My best friend Sarah, my mom, and Tessa came with me to this quaint little bridal boutique tucked into the corner of downtown Charleston. The kind of place with vintage chandeliers and delicate lace draped on every rack. I tried on a few dresses, but when I stepped into the one, I knew instantly. Ivory satin, soft tulle skirt, embroidered floral bodice. It was like something out of a dream. But what made it truly special was what we added. My grandmother's veil, carefully restored, and a small pearl brooch that belonged to my mom, sewn right at the waist. It wasn't just a dress anymore, it was family history, stitched into every thread. When I walked out of the dressing room, I saw my mom wipe away a tear. Sarah gasped and held her heart. And Tessa? She gave me a tight smile and clapped once. You look cute, she said.
Cute.
That was her word. Not stunning. Not beautiful. Not breathtaking.
Cute.
Still, I ignored the sting. I told myself she wasn't great with emotional stuff. I convinced myself that deep down, she meant well. Fast forward a few weeks. The wedding was only days away, and everything was falling into place. The final guest list was set. The flowers were chosen. The dress was at the boutique for its final adjustments. And then, 3 nights before the big day, everything shattered. I was getting ready for bed when I got the call from the boutique owner, a kind older woman named Elise. Jenna, she said, her voice trembling. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. There's been a situation. My heart dropped. What kind of situation? There's been damage to the dress. Severe damage. I thought maybe a steam mishap, maybe someone spilled coffee. But her next words chilled me. It looks like vandalism. I couldn't breathe. What do you mean? How is that even possible? There's surveillance footage, she said quietly. And I think you're going to want to see it yourself. I drove to the boutique in my pajamas and a hoodie, heart pounding in my chest. Elise met me at the door and led me to the back office. On the screen, the grainy footage played. It was after hours. The store was locked, but someone had used a key. The figure walked in confidently, like they belonged. Long honey brown hair. Familiar stride. It was Tessa. I watched in stunned silence as she unzipped the protective cover, took out a pair of scissors, and began slicing. She didn't hesitate. She wasn't drunk. She wasn't crying. She was smiling. Then she uncorked a bottle of red wine, poured it down the front of the gown, and stood there, watching the stains spread like blood. Like she was proud. I sat there, shaking. Not a single tear fell at first. Just silence. Emptiness. Elise placed a hand on my shoulder. I'm so sorry, Jenna. But I couldn't even speak. This wasn't just a dress. This was my moment. My symbol. My one-day fairy tale. And my own sister butchered it. The part that hurt most wasn't the loss of the gown. It was the truth I could no longer ignore. Tessa didn't just envy me. She hated seeing me happy. And for the first time in my life, I stopped making excuses for her. I didn't call her. I didn't scream. I didn't confront her. Instead, I wiped away the single tear that finally fell, stood up straight, and walked out of that boutique with one thought in my mind. If she wanted to ruin my wedding, she had no idea who she was messing with. People say your wedding is supposed to be the happiest time of your life. For me, it became the beginning of something else entirely, a reckoning. After watching that surveillance footage, I didn't sleep. I sat in my car outside the boutique for over an hour, trying to wrap my head around what I'd seen. My sister, Tessa, my maid of honor, had deliberately destroyed my wedding dress. The same dress she saw me cry over. The one I chose with our mom. The one that held pieces of our family's legacy. I kept replaying the footage in my mind like a bad movie on loop. Her face. Her smirk. The wine. The scissors. The satisfaction. The next morning I called my mom. My voice was cold.
Steady.
Do you have a minute? She sighed. I know, sweetie. Elise called me last night. She told me everything. I waited, holding my breath, hoping, just hoping, my mom would be outraged, furious, protective of me, her youngest daughter. But instead, she said, your sister made a terrible mistake. A mistake? She broke in, Mom. She had a key, she whispered. She told me she wanted to go see the dress again. She said she was trying to help you with something. You gave her the key? I said, my voice cracking. I didn't think she would do something like this, she said, almost pleading. She wasn't herself. She was drinking again. She's been spiraling for a while now, Jenna. You know she's been struggling. Struggling? Was that supposed to justify it? She poured red wine down the front of the dress and laughed, Mom. She didn't look drunk. She looked vindictive. She's your sister, she said. Family makes mistakes. And family forgives. Something in me snapped. Mom, I said, shaking. If someone outside this family did this to me, would you still be saying forgive them? Silence.
Exactly.
I hung up before she could say anything else. I stared out the window of my apartment and watched the sun rise like nothing had happened, while inside me, everything was on fire. Luke, my fiancé, held me that morning. I didn't have to explain. He just wrapped his arms around me and let me sob into his chest. She did it because she's jealous, he whispered. She's always tried to outshine you. But she couldn't stand that this day was yours. He was right. Tessa had been slipping comments into conversations for months. Enjoy it now. Once you're married, it's all downhill. I give it a year before you're bored. Oh, I remember when everyone was obsessed with my wedding photos. But I kept brushing it off. Because that's what I'd been trained to do my entire life. Let Tessa have her moment. Let her win. Don't provoke her. Be the good sister. Well, I wasn't going to play that role anymore. I spent the next day in damage control mode. I had two options: cancel the wedding or find a new dress and keep going. I chose the second. I called every boutique in Charleston. No one had anything that could be tailored in time. That's when Sarah, my best friend and real-life guardian angel, called in a favor. I know someone who runs a private atelier, she said. Super exclusive. She owes me a favor. Let's go now. We drove across the city to a tucked-away studio that looked more like a cozy art gallery than a bridal shop. Inside, a woman named Marisol greeted us. She was soft-spoken but sharp-eyed. She listened as I explained what happened. Well, the parts one could say without crying again, and then led me to a row of gowns unlike anything I'd ever seen. There near the window was the one. It wasn't poofy or princessy like the original. It was sleek, modern, with silk that shimmered like liquid pearl. A high slit, a low back, and intricate hand-sewn beading along the neckline. Understated but powerful. Bold but timeless. I slipped it on, and something shifted in me. It wasn't the dress I had imagined for my wedding day. It was stronger. Fiercer.
Me.
I looked in the mirror and said out loud, "I want this one." Marisol didn't blink. "I'll have it ready in 48 hours. As I stood there, I realized something important. Tessa didn't ruin my wedding. She tried to ruin me, my confidence, my joy, my moment. But she failed. Because when someone shows you who they are, believe them. And when your own family tries to cut you down, you don't shrink. You rise. Still, I knew I couldn't let her get away with it. Not with a fake apology. Not with a half-hearted excuse. She needed to feel what I felt, not just sadness, but loss. Regret. So I began to plan. While my mom begged me to keep the family together and Tessa sent fake cheerful texts pretending nothing happened, I quietly called my wedding coordinator. I asked about the reception, about the audiovisual setup, about playing a short video clip during my speech. She said, "Of course. We've got a projector and screens already set up. What are you thinking, an engagement slideshow?" I smiled. Something like that. Because I knew one thing for certain. Tessa had taken something from me, but I was about to take everything from her. The morning of my wedding, the sky was painted in soft pastels, pale pinks and golden streaks that shimmered like promises. I remember looking out the window of my hotel suite, sipping coffee with shaky hands, wondering how I was supposed to walk down that aisle knowing what I knew. But as I looked at my reflection in the mirror, draped in that striking, one-of-a-kind silk gown, I didn't see the broken sister anymore. I saw someone reborn. Stronger. Calmer. Ready. The venue was a historic mansion just outside Charleston, with sweeping oaks and Spanish moss and a ballroom that looked like it belonged in a dream. Guests arrived in champagne-colored shuttles. Luke's smile beamed at the end of the aisle. Music swelled. My heart raced. I walked in, head held high. Not for show. Not to pretend I was okay. But because I was. The ceremony was flawless. Not a single hiccup. We exchanged vows under a floral archway while sunlight poured through stained glass. And when Luke said, "I'll protect your heart like it's my own," I felt a quiet peace wash over me. Tessa sat in the front row with our parents, wearing a pale green dress she'd bragged about finding on clearance, because that's what happens when someone else gets the spotlight. Her smile never reached her eyes. Not once. And she had no idea what was coming. At the reception, laughter filled the air. Glasses clinked. The band played acoustic covers of love songs while guests danced barefoot under twinkle lights. For a moment, it really was the kind of wedding you see in movies, except mine had a little bonus feature, revenge. I had waited.
Planned.
And now it was time. When it came time for the traditional maid of honor toast, I stepped in. "Tessa actually couldn't make a speech tonight," I said with a warm smile, holding the mic, but I figured I'd speak on her behalf. A few confused chuckles. She froze in her seat. I turned to the crowd. You know, they say sisters are built-in best friends. And that's what I always believed. Even when it wasn't easy. Even when it hurt. The guests were still smiling, unsure where I was going. My mother's lips tightened. Luke just watched me, trusting me completely. I gestured toward the projector screen behind me. "So, tonight, I want to share a little story. A small behind-the-scenes look at what it took to get here." I nodded to the DJ booth. The lights dimmed, and the footage began to play. At first, people weren't sure what they were seeing. The inside of a bridal boutique. A woman entering with a key. The camera angle switched. And then, gasps. Tessa.
Clear as day.
Pulling out the scissors. The cutting. The wine. The smile. The laughter. The screen went black. The room? silent. I stepped forward again, voice steady. That was 3 days ago. That was my sister. My maid of honor. The person I trusted most. I let the silence hang in the air like smoke. And for those wondering, yes, she did it? No, she never apologized. And yes, I still chose to show up today. Because this wedding wasn't just about dresses or flowers or fairy tales. I turned and locked eyes with Tessa. She looked pale, trembling, but I didn't flinch. This wedding was about becoming the woman who could walk through fire and still say, I do. To love.
To growth.
To the future. I raised my glass. To cutting ties with people who never wanted to see you happy. My guests sat in stunned silence. Some wide-eyed. A few teary. My father's mouth was hanging open. My mom looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. And Tessa? Tessa burst into tears. She stood up abruptly and ran out of the ballroom, heels clacking, sobs echoing in her wake. For the first time in my life, I didn't follow her. Sarah came up beside me and slipped her arm through mine. Are you okay? She whispered. I smiled. More than okay. I finished my champagne, handed off the mic, and walked back to Luke. Guess the party just got real, he said with a soft grin. I kissed him and whispered, let's dance. The rest of the night was surreal. I half expected someone to come up and scold me for airing family drama in public. But instead, guest after guest came up to me, quietly, sincerely. Good for you. You were so brave. She had that coming. You saved someone else from making excuses for their own Tessa. Because here's the thing about family betrayal, it's more common than people admit. But most of us are taught to suffer silently, to preserve the image,
To keep the peace.
I wasn't interested in peace anymore. I was interested in truth. And my truth? I didn't lose a sister that day. I let go of a weight I'd been carrying my whole life. Tessa didn't come back into the ballroom that night. Not for the cake, not for the first dance, not even for the awkward bouquet toss she once swore she'd dominate. She was just gone. And for the first time in years, so was her shadow. The wedding ended like a dream, one I'd rewritten for myself. After the guests trickled out and the music faded, Luke and I walked barefoot through the dewy grass outside the mansion. I remember tilting my head toward the stars and thinking, maybe peace isn't a place. Maybe it's the silence that follows a storm you survived. The days that followed were quieter than I expected. I thought there'd be drama, screaming, family group texts imploding, our mom demanding I apologize. But instead, there was silence. Tessa didn't call. Not once. My mom sent a long message the next morning, a tangled web of guilt and passive blame. She said she couldn't believe I'd humiliate family like that, and that Tessa was heartbroken. No apology. No ownership. Just the usual dance. Protect Tessa. Punish me for refusing to play along. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because deep down, I knew something had shifted. Not just in our family, but in me. For years, I'd tried to be the fixer, the forgiver, the peacemaker, the quiet one who made room so my sister could always shine. But the girl who stood on that stage, mic in hand, voice clear, wasn't built to make others comfortable. She was built to heal. And healing, I realized, isn't always soft. Sometimes it's a sharp cut, the kind that bleeds before it mends. 3 weeks later, I was back from our honeymoon, curled up in our new apartment with Luke, when I got a letter in the mail. Not an email, not a text, a letter, in Tessa's handwriting. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. I expected rage,
Blame.
maybe a weak apology wrapped in self-pity. But what I got was something else. Jenna,
I don't even know where to start.
watching myself on that screen broke something in me. Not because I got caught, because for the first time, I saw what I've become. And it made me sick. I hated that dress because it was everything I wanted to feel and didn't.
Joy. Hope. Beauty.
You glowed in it. And I felt like I was drowning in my own bitterness. I'm not proud of what I did. I don't expect forgiveness. But I need you to know, I'm finally getting help. Real help. I checked into a treatment center last week. I'm staying for 90 days. Not because of you. Because of me. But if there's a day in the future when you're ready to talk, I'll be here. I'll always be your sister. Even if I don't deserve to be. With love.
Tessa.
I read it twice. 3 times. I felt something wet slide down my cheek and realized I was crying. But not the way I cried when I lost my dress. This time, it wasn't grief. It was grief letting go. I folded the letter, placed it in a drawer, and walked back into the living room. Luke looked up from his book. You okay? I nodded.
Yeah.
I think I actually am. He pulled me into his arms and kissed the top of my head. You don't have to figure it all out right now. I know, I said. I never realized how much space she took up in my heart, how much pain I was carrying with her name on it. Luke held me tighter. You made her face herself. That's more than most people ever get. He was right. My wedding wasn't just a day. It was a turning point. I didn't just marry the love of my life. I divorced the version of me who thought she had to keep bleeding just so others could stay whole. 6 months later, Tessa stayed in treatment. She didn't reach out again for a while, but I kept tabs from a distance, through mutual friends, quiet updates from relatives who still dared to talk to me. Apparently, she was clean. She was working a program, volunteering, owning what she did. And when she finally did call, it wasn't to beg or grovel. It was to say, you saved me, Jenna, and I hated you for it, but now I'm just grateful you didn't let me keep hiding. We talked for 2 hours that night. I didn't say, I forgive you, but I did say, I'm glad you're still here. And maybe for now, that was enough.
Now.
When people ask me what my wedding was like, I always smile and say, beautiful. Not perfect, but beautiful.
Because it was.
It was the day I learned that love isn't just about pretty dresses and picture-perfect moments. It's about knowing who you are, what you deserve, and refusing to shrink, no matter who tries to dim your light. Tessa ruined my wedding dress, but I made her pay for it with something more powerful than revenge. The truth. And her own tears. And, in the end, that was the last tear she ever cried for the wrong reasons.